And welcome into the Citadel Gray Line. Since back in 2005, we've been gathering here on a weekly basis during most sports seasons of LCID, talking about those mighty cadets of South Carolina's historic military college. I hope you're off to a very good week. John Rawl is my name, and it is so wonderful to be with you here as we have another week. We've got a very busy show today. We've got Andrew Miller standing by, the Charleston Post and Courier. We've got Thomas Scruggs, our go-to guy for Citadel sports and knob knowledge and all kind of fun stuff. But we also have a classmate of yours truly on today's show. Billy Downer is with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, and Major Billy Downer will be on to talk about wildlife in the Palmetto State and how he went from being a cadet to being a representative of SCDNR. So if you've got a question about wildlife or more, or a question about the wildlife of Citadel Athletics, we welcome your feedback at 800-277-7007. Would love to hear from you. Again, a very busy show, and we thank you for being a part of all that we have going on here at the Gray Line. Let's go to our Post and Courier Charleston beat writer, our Citadel beat writer for the Charleston-based newspaper. That would be one Andrew Miller. The Citadel comes into the Virginia Union, or whatever it's called, VUL Lynchburg week, following a really tough loss to the Chattanooga Mocs.
Yeah, Thomas and I were talking off air about this. I thought the Citadel played really well against Chattanooga. They're probably a fumble or two away here from making that, coming down to the last couple of plays in the fourth quarter. I thought they played inspired football. I thought defensively they were really good, especially in the first half. And offensively, they were able to move the ball. I was a little surprised they started Peyton Derrick against the Mocs, but I thought he threw the ball really well. I thought he had a couple of really nice runs. There might have been a couple of also instances where he held on to the ball too long, took a sack, but maybe he could have gotten rid of the ball and had a little bit, had an incompletion there and kind of lived to play another down. But I thought overall that was one of their better performances of the year. I really think that Chattanooga is a very good football team. Obviously, them and Samford, they're going to pretty much play for the SoCon title here next week. I think I'm talking about this Saturday. I think their game is this Saturday. And I thought the homecoming crowd was great. The atmosphere was great. And again, just a couple of fumbles here, and I think that game could have turned out differently. Really impressed with the team's resiliency after a really bad performance against Samford the week before. I think there are things that they can build on going into these last two games against Virginia University of Lynchburg. I think that's how they like to be referred to as.
The Vols, as I call them, VULS. The Citadel loses 31-21 to the Mocs of UTC in that beautiful homecoming. I got my seersucker on today. I know it's November, but my God, it was 80 degrees at Johnson Hagood this past weekend. It sure felt like mid-August, and I'm still celebrating at least summertime, even though the Citadel now drops to 2-7 overall on the year. The third of the wheels here is one Thomas Scruggs from the class of 1995. Hello, Thomas, and here we are talking about another Citadel loss.
Yes, sir. Before we talk football, John, I got to throw a flag on you for wearing seersucker after Labor Day. But yeah, we're talking about another Citadel loss once again, and it's like Andrew said, we're in this game. First half close game, we go into halftime 10-7, but once again, game 9. We're turning over the ball at critical times in, deep in our own territory. So short drives. Peyton Derrick played great. I think that was his best game, maybe. I think he was 11 for 13, had 2 nice touchdown passes. We're right there against a team that's going to compete for the conference title, and just can't get it done. You can't turn the ball over 2 or 3 times a game. It seems like we talk about this every week. I don't understand why our guys can't hold on to the football. I don't know if it's technique. I don't know if it's strength and conditioning. I just don't know.
I told you before we started the show, I have the reason for that. I have the justification for that. And I think it is probably what you just mentioned, strength. They did. Donnell Boucher, who had been there for years. We've had a change in strength and conditioning at the Citadel with the leadership there. I don't know the reason why they're fumbling, but it could be they just don't have the muscle power. I doubt that's the reason, but that's a good point you bring up. But yeah, fumbles continue to be a little bit of a problem. The Citadel got off to a good start in this game against the Mocs, and that's what you got to do in the Brent Thompson offense is jump on them early, hit them in the mouth, as one Charlie Baker would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, one interesting thing, I'm sorry, Andrew, I noticed one stat from the game that we usually win significantly is the time of possession. It was pretty close. I think we may have had the ball 2 minutes more than Chattanooga did. And what that usually tells you is triple option is not working very well. And in this case, we threw a lot of passes. And so that tends to cut down on your time of possession.
Yeah, again, I thought Peyton, that was his best game. What was he, 11 of 13, had a couple of touchdown passes. And again, when he had those opportunities to run, when on the perimeter, when he got out on the option, I thought he turned in a couple of decent chunk plays that we hadn't seen from him early in the season. So, I thought the first half kind of went almost perfectly for the Bulldogs. They had that turnover on they were kind of driving down, and Peyton had an interception, and Brent Thompson in his Monday press conference, he took the blame for that. He said that was a play that he had called, that they ended up being in a different coverage, and it was kind of his fault. He thought they'd be in another coverage, and they weren't. They were in this different coverage, a zone coverage, and that was why they were able to pick that ball off. So, I thought it was a really good first half, and again, I thought the crowd was great. They were really into it, and you could tell that the players were feeding off of that.
It was a great crowd. It was homecoming at the Citadel campus. The penultimate game is there is this one last home game here on the schedule, but I know those guys wanted to go out with a big crowd with a victory, and they played well, but that number 11 Mocs team just proved to be a little bit too much for the Citadel. The Citadel passing and running in this game, as we mentioned, Derek with a decent day passing. The question is, Andrew, is how did Derek get the nod to start in this game after we've seen Underwood play the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, and I was a little, again, Thomas and I were talking about this off air. I was surprised that he got the start, and I think again this kind of goes back to Brent Thompson knowing, he said last week he was going to have to build this game plan from the offensive line out. So what gave the offensive line the best chance to succeed? And then he kind of went with the receivers and then the running backs and then to the quarterback. And he thought he was going to have to take some chances in the passing game. He thought he was going to have to, pass the ball a little bit more. And the best passer on that team, no question, is Peyton Derrick. He throws the ball better than Ahmad Green or Grayson Underwood. So I understood his decision. I think it will be interesting. I think Peyton Derrick's going to start against Lynchburg. I don't think it's going to matter who's going to start against them. This should be, and I know I'm probably breaking every rule in sports here, but this should be an easy win for the Bulldogs. All three quarterbacks should end up playing. They should get everybody in the game. This should not even be a close game. Really by halftime, and if it is, then that the Bulldogs were overlooking them and looking towards that military classic of the South with the Silver Shako, which is coming up in a couple of weeks.
Did the Citadel come out of this game fairly healthy, Andrew?
They did. The guys who I was worried about in the secondary, Chris Beverly being one of them, he didn't play a good little chunk in the fourth quarter. I talked to him yesterday. He just said he had some cramps. Other than that, I think they came out. This time of the year, obviously everyone's going to be bumped and bruised up, but I think everybody's good to go who went into the game.
Okay. Well, that's good news. Again, the Citadel loses this game and now has this one last home game against VUL at Johnson Hagood Stadium. Then it's on to the Silver Shako contest. Hey, we want to let you know that this show is brought to you each and every week by IPS Packaging and Automation. IPS Packaging and Automation has been doing their thing since 1976. They provide manufacturers and e-commerce companies with the very best packaging products and automation in the industry, offering a complete line of packaging products from stretch films and 3M tapes to corrugated boxes, strapping, and equipment automation. IPS Packaging and Automation out of Fountain Inn, South Carolina will analyze and streamline your current methods to improve your packaging process. Call them up at 800-277-7007 to learn more, or visit them on the website ipack.com. IPS Packaging and Automation is a proud supporter of Citadel Athletics. Obviously, 2-7, that's not a good thing. As we talked about last week on the show, Brent Thompson's days are most likely numbered. One thing that you brought out on the show, Andrew, a little bit of a breaking news story, was that the athletic director, Capaccio at the Citadel, had a 2-year extension on his contract. Have you got any more feedback from maybe your readers on that breaking story you told us about last week?
Yeah, I think it's actually a 4-year deal, but I cannot get that 100% confirmed. I have a pretty good source, and they said it was 4 years, and I haven't heard anything really back from anybody. But because I haven't put anything in print yet about it, I'm hoping to get that confirmed on Saturday during the game.
So what you told us last week was unconfirmed?
Correct.
Yikes. Okay.
Which is what I'm in the business of, right? Innuendo and rumor and hearsay.
Okay. All right. Well, there was a lot of talk about how this guy got the extension, but Brett Thompson's contract still expected to run out at the end of this year. And if you were a betting man, you might want to go to Vegas that there's going to be a coaching change at South Carolina's military college. Again, coming up in just a minute, we've got Billy Downer. He's with South Carolina DNR, going to talk about his role promoting wildlife across the Palmetto State. Andrew, are you a big hunter?
I am not, no.
Well, you might want to stick around and learn a few things, because Thomas, I bet you're a little bit of a hunter. Something tells me it's deer season out there these days, right?
It is deer season, John. I'm more of a golfer than a hunter. So.
Okay. Well, I'll be quite honest. I'm not the biggest outdoorsman either, but that's okay. We love our outdoorsmen. We're going to learn more about
With that
suit.
You could have fooled me that you weren't an outdoorsman.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I actually, funny story, Andrew. This is absolute Citadel. Totally being honest with you here. I have actually worn seersucker while hunting. I haven't done a lot of hunting in my time. But actually, many years ago, it was a sort of not so cold evening. I was wearing seersucker shorts, and someone was out coon hunting, and they said, "I got one out there in the tree. Why don't you come watch this?" So me and my seersucker shorts went out there, and it's the only time I've ever been coon hunting. And I don't even know if they got the thing out of the tree or not. But yeah, seersucker works pretty good for coon hunting. Now the other, maybe fishing too. I bet you that would be a good thing. Other sports, I'm not so sure of. But yeah, don't pick on seersucker. Watch what you say. This is actually, Andrew, you might not realize this. This is actually an official fabric of the Military College of South Carolina. Do you know what I'm talking about there, Cadet Scruggs?
Seersucker, that's an official fabric of the Citadel? No.
Yeah. They have this thing called the short gray line, which has kind of popped up in the last 15 years. And that's a group, I think, of senior students that are down there in front of the Corps. It's kind of like, they're kind of like cheerleaders, but if you ever watch them, they always wear a Oxford dress shirt, and they got seersucker shorts on, and they have a straw hat. There's about a half dozen of them. Short gray line. Maybe they got their nickname from us. I don't know. But yeah, check that out next time you're at Johnson Hagood.
Well, John, did you get the straw hat as well?
No, I don't have the straw hat yet, but I'll work on it. Where I'm from, we call those covers. Okay, we got to talk briefly about basketball. Anything else football before we bring on Major Downer? Andrew, what's going on? Anything else football wise?
I got a little feature on Chris Beverly and Destin Mack, kind of talking about playing their last game at Johnson Hagood. I think that's going to be in the print Saturday, I think online, and then the Post and Courier. They were really, two guys who've just been absolute warriors for the Citadel over the years, and had plenty of chances to leave for Power 5 schools, but stayed loyal to the program. Brent Thompson mentioned them in the Monday press conference, and just good guys and good players, and I think guys that Citadel alumni can be proud of.
All right, check that out at postandcourier.com, and follow Andrew on all the social media outlets as well. Andrew, how about that Citadel basketball team? Their opener was Monday night at Little John Coliseum. They kept this game close within a half dozen points with about 5 minutes in the ball game. Clemson ends up winning the game, but I was impressed.
Yeah, I've only been able to see a little bit of the first half. I was at the College of Charleston game Monday night against Chattanooga. But yeah, I think that a lot of people are surprised that the Citadel was able to hang around as close as they were. Now, the Citadel was also missing Hall, one of their big players, their big power forward up from Dorman. He's a really good player. I think second team All ACC or maybe third team All ACC. He was out, but still a very nice performance there on the road against Power 5 school in Clemson. And again, one thing that Ed Conroy is going to do is he's going to play good, sound, fundamental basketball. They're going to be solid defensively. They're going to be able to shoot the three. And so this is not a huge surprise to me that they were able to keep it close against Clemson. And I think if your expectations are too high for the basketball program, then you're going to be a little bit disappointed. But, I'm thinking that they're going to surprise some people this year in the Southern Conference.
All right. Again, a 11-point victory, I believe, is what Clemson ended up getting up there at Little John this week. Citadel with a home game against the Presbyterian Blue Hose Thursday at McAllister Fieldhouse. How weird is it that we actually have a basketball player with the last name McAllister? I think he's a knob, so he ought to feel right at home at McAllister Fieldhouse during Citadel basketball here this year. All right, Andrew, any other news, information, gossip you need to tell us before we switch over to SCDNR talk?
No, I think that's about got it for this week. Hoping that we come back next week and we're talking about a big win heading into the Silver Shako game.
Well, we hope so. We sure hope so. Andrew, thank you for all that you do. Again, follow him at postandcourier.com and all his social media connections. And we'll see you next week getting ready for the VMI Keydets.
Yep. You guys have a great weekend.
All right. Andrew Miller, everybody. Salute to you. Okay, let me tell you about Knob Knowledge before we welcome in Major Danner. Knob Knowledge, we had our trivia question last week. We have a successful winner of that, and I want to appreciate that. Now, Thomas, you need to get to work on this show. And so therefore, you got us a good Knob Knowledge question. If you don't, think about it real quick, because I'm going to welcome in our graphic to promote Knob Knowledge, courtesy of BigRedPalmetto.store. You can text the answer that Thomas is going to come up with to 843-779-8496. That's how you can get in touch with us, 843-779-8496. When we get the question, you just text that, and the first person to correctly give us the correct Knob Knowledge answer will get a $25 gift certificate to BigRedPalmetto.store. That is a website that has literally dozens, if not hundreds, of Citadel items. I saw at homecoming this past weekend, a lot of the classes were using BigRedPalmetto.store for their reunion items, some great looking material that I saw. So keep that in mind when you're planning your next reunion at LCID. But yeah, they've got the new logos. They've got the classic Jumpin' Bulldog logo, spikes on there. So many great items for men, women. They've got kids stuff for the car, stuff for I think the grill, iPhone items, and more. BigRedPalmetto.store. Richard Blanton does a fantastic job there. Please check them out. And again, get ready to pick up that phone and text us your Knob Knowledge answer, 843-779-8496. No pressure, Thomas. What you got?
No, John. Well, since you put me on the spot like that, I'm a history buff, so I think this week's Knob Knowledge question will be, name the battle that the entire Corps of Cadets engaged in during the war between the states. That should be an easy one for us old Corps types.
Can I take a guess?
No, not on air.
I think this is right. Newmarket.
No, even though VMI falsely claimed that was the only time an entire student body fought as one unit in a war, and that's incorrect.
Okay. All right. You heard Thomas's Knob Knowledge question. What is the one battle that South Carolina's military college fought in as a Corps of Cadets in the war between the states? 843-779-8496. You can text that answer. We'll get you a $25 gift certificate. Well, I'll tell you what, Thomas. you are responsible for bringing on our next guest. Now, I remember this guy back in the 90s wearing a little bit different shade of uniform. It was more of a gray than what he's going to be showing us in a second. But what led you to bring up this guy, Major Billy Downer, to be a guest on today's show?
So I've been listening to Billy for a couple of years on Sports Talk, Phil Kornblut's show here in Columbia, John. Listen to that quite often. And a couple times a month get to hear Billy talk about the great outdoors here in South Carolina. So I thought, why not, bring Billy on? Because, most sports fans are fans of the outdoors as well.
You are correct on that. So, without further ado, let's bring on the guy who switched in that cadet gray uniform for a beautiful green shade and a badge. It's Major Billy Downer, South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. Welcome in to Citadel Grayline from the class of 1993. Woot, woot.
Good to be here, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Billy, thank you for taking time out of your day. Again, if you're in South Carolina, you probably have heard you on the radio and seen you around. And what's it like to be famous?
Yeah, I'm not sure we call it famous, but I sure am on the radio twice a month. We're entering our 6th year, I think, with Phil on Sports Talk. So it's been a learning experience for Phil Kornblut because he had no idea about the outdoors as far as hunting, fishing, or boating for that matter. So it's funny, y'all were talking about it beforehand, none of the three of y'all really have any hunting experience, which is okay because the outdoors is more than just hunting, it's fishing. And particularly in our line of work, boating is a huge part of what we do day in, day out. And I bet that if I ask each one of you if you've ever been on a boat before, your answer is going to be yes, because South Carolina is a boating state. So we cover a variety of topics every month with Phil, and boating is a huge part of that.
Yeah, and again, you're talking about Phil Kornblut of the South Carolina statewide talk show for sports called Sports Talk. And Thomas, I'm going to have my own little knob knowledge question of you since you like to listen to that program. Now, Mr.
Yes,
Mr. Kornblut did not end up going to South Carolina's historic military college for his schooling. But do you happen to know Phil Kornblut's hometown?
That would be Latta, South Carolina, John.
Are you sure of that?
I'm positive.
Okay, I think you're right. It's either Dillon or Latta. I think they're like neighbors, if I'm not mistaken. So somewhere
Yeah,
over there.
If you're going to ask knob knowledge, you got to know the answer before you ask the question.
Well, I was going to say Dillon, but Billy, you probably know. So what is it?
It's Latta. It's Latta.
Okay.
He brings that up. If you've listened to our show over the last 5 years, he always brings up the time that he shot a shotgun once in his life, and it was at the tennis courts in Latta, which I didn't even know Latta had tennis courts. But anyway, that's his story, and he sticks to it. So,
all right. Well, I am right. Dillon and Latta are side by side, and I think I know that's famous for being Kornblut's hometown, but right around the corner from there is probably the most famous thing in that part of South Carolina, and that would be south of the border. Yeah. I've been
We don't
there
claim
too.
that, John.
No, you don't claim that. Okay, Billy, let's talk about what your hometown is. Where did you grow up, and how did you end up at 171 Moultrie Street?
So I grew up in Sumter, South Carolina. Was raised by my grandparents. My grandfather was a World War II veteran. He so had a proud lineage of service in my family. My grandmother's brother died on Iwo Jima and got the Bronze Star. So a lot of history there. Her dad was a former school principal and teacher. He went to Wofford, of all places, back in the day when Wofford wore the same uniform we did. And it's very interesting because I have the 1918 annual from Wofford, and they look just like we did at school. It's kind of funny in gray. A lot of folks don't know that. My history at Citadel began going to Boys State, like a lot of guys did, in 1988. In the summer of '88, I went to Boys State. We stayed in Bravo Company in 1st Battalion. It was, all the things that Boys State is. I was dating someone at the time. I hated being away from home. I wasn't into politics and the government things. I remember when my dad picked me up, he looked at me and he said, wouldn't this be a great place to go to school? And my response to him, are you crazy? This place doesn't have air conditioning. Are you nuts? This place sucks. And December of '88, I received an Air Force scholarship, and I decided to go to the Citadel of all things. There it goes. So I entered in '89 with my classmates in August to that hot hellhole, and we got removed for Hugo and all those great memories of that. Took my roommate from Pennsylvania.
They weren't that great, Billy. Come on, let's be honest.
Hey, we say that, but the reason we remember them is because of memory. And great memories don't necessarily mean they were good memories; they're just great memories. So, a lot of different things went on, at Hugo and just that time. But my roommate was from Erie, Pennsylvania at the time. I was from Sumter, South Carolina. It was the North meets the South. We hated each other's guts. It's the typical Citadel story. He ended up leaving after the end of our second semester. He walked out across the quad, if you can believe that, finished his exams before recognition day and just walked across the quad, and we never saw him again. Went to Penn State, I believe, and graduated. But my Citadel story was there. I lost my Air Force scholarship promptly my first semester. Barely made it through, was on academic probation. Was in engineering, thought that was a great idea until it wasn't. Changed over after my first year to biology, did much better, graduated with a biology degree from Citadel in '93. Spent 3 years in a hotel company, enjoyed a great time there, some great classmates. Rob Shelnut, Will Fuller, Hubie Oates, a lot of good folks. Chris Chapman, I can keep going.
Saul Martinez.
Saul Martinez, absolutely.
How could you forget
Mitch
him?
Mooseburger, Rob Mims. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of guys.
Hotel Hell, everybody.
Hotel Hell, absolutely. Loved it. Saul and I were in the same room the night before recognition day doing push-ups. Anyway, a whole lot of fun memories there. But 3 years in hotel and was on regimental staff my senior year. Really enjoyed that. A good experience there. Got to be really good friends with Eric Rathke and Chris Stevenson, my roommate for senior year. Rob Shelnut, Will Fuller joined us on regimental staff. So we had a really good senior year. Great experience there. Enjoyed
and we're
that.
proud of what you're doing. You obviously are on the good side of the class of 1993, Billy, unlike me. But you've mentioned his name twice, Will Fuller, from right there in H Company. Give everybody an update on what the heck Mr. Fuller's doing these days.
Last I remember, Will was always into money management and investments. He was always playing around with that, and I think he really did really well with that and got really big into the investment world. And I'm not sure where he works now.
Well, let me tell you there, Major. He is the CEO of a little company called Transamerica.
Wow, yep.
And he was in Africa this weekend. I know so because one of our other classmates borrowed his golf cart and came onto campus and ran out of fuel coming into the campus or something like that. It was crazy. But he's got a place somewhere in Charleston. But that company, I think, is based out of Philadelphia. But Will Fuller is a definite success story. Transamerica, by the way, if you've ever been to San Francisco, that's the giant building in San Francisco is the Transamerica building there in San Francisco. A place I haven't been, by the way, but I'm only repeating what's been told to me. But, yeah, very impressive there from H Company. Good job on that. So you graduate. You said you got a degree in biology?
I did. I got a BS in biology from Citadel and mostly a pre-med background. We had a lot of fun doing plants and things with some of our staff at Citadel, good memories there. But I left and started with the South Carolina Waterfowl Association. For those that remember, SCWA is still around today. I worked with them for about 4 years as a biologist to help them start their camp program and get it going. And then I finally got hired with DNR. Put in twice. My second time going through, I got accepted. Was hired in Clarendon County where I lived in Manning, South Carolina. I worked in Manning on Lake Marion, enforcing boating, game and fish violations, all those fun things for 8 years before transferring and being promoted to our education section, doing hunter ed, and ended up being the lieutenant over that for a number of years, promoted to captain, and then promoted most recently to major in 2018 over our staff operations. So I've been doing that now for 4 years. And at the end of this year, in January 2nd, I will have 25 years of service with the state and will be able to retire if I wanted to. So it's been a great career run, a lot of great memories enforcing game and fish and boating violations, lots of fun stories, alligators, you name it, along the way. Have some great friends, but been a great career. A lot of good Citadel folks here. When I started class of 86, we had some good folks here. Donnie was actually taught me boating when we were at the Citadel, but Donnie was great, and he's since retired. And then, of course, our adjutant general, class of 86 as well, for South Carolina, great. He was my major when I came in and been promoted up to a lieutenant colonel before he retired. But again, our adjutant general, so a lot of fun. A lot of young Citadel cadets now. I'm over our staff operations section, which entails a lot of things, from our aviation to our communications to training to our hiring process for new officers across the state. So I get to look at applications, basically preview all the applications that come in for folks that want to be new officers for our state. And so I see a lot of Citadel cadets come across the desk, and we've had a good success story recently with Citadel folks. Been good. But again, I got good memories with some Citadel folks. Like I said, Van McCarty, our adjutant general now in the state, was a Citadel guy. In fact, I called him when I was a senior at Citadel from my room and regimental staff to try to figure out how to get a internship with DNR. And he helped me get that. Was one of the first interns actually our department ever had, and worked with the units in Georgetown and Charleston County a little bit. And eventually it worked out for me to be able to be a full-time wildlife officer. It's been a lot of fun. I've gotten to go across the nation to different states to get to meet different wildlife officers. But the long gray line is still a good memory for me and a lot of good connections.
Again, Billy is with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. I don't currently live in the great state of South Carolina, but I'm going to ask you a question because this seems to be the norm, at least in the southern states. Billy, people like you that are in the DNR departments of their respective states, you're wearing that badge. And it seems to me that DNRs have more power and have more flexibility than just about any other division of a law enforcement. Am I right on that? And how do you get that much flexibility?
So that's a great point. Technically and historically, wildlife officers have more authority, generally just because of the nature of what we do. We are state law enforcement officers, so therein we have the ability to enforce any state law. So that gives us a wide range of authority. Our officers do focus on game and fish violations, though, boating violations. Of course, alcohol violations come in there and mix in their drugs, those kind of things, because folks that go out in the outdoors also participate in other illegal activities. Way back in the day when I first started, illegal stills were still going. So we got in the illegal still trade a little bit, which is a lot of fun historically, dealing with that, smashing and grabbing the old stills. Not as big a deal anymore. In the 90s, it was still going on, and I was in a county that historically had been a part of that illegal trade since the turn of the century back in the 1900s. So kind of interesting there. But yes, we do have a lot of authority. We do have our officers, though we focus, can we stop someone for speeding? Absolutely, because it's a state law. Do we stop folks for speeding? Not that often, because typically we're focusing on the game and fish and boating violations. But our job is to serve the public, to keep the greater public at large safe. So when we're up and down our roadways, if a DNR officer stops you, they have absolutely the authority to do so and the ability to enforce that law. So that is a true statement. We do have a wide range of authority, which makes us in reality one of the greatest law enforcement authorities in the state. But sheriff's deputies can enforce things too that we can enforce. So there's a lot of similarities in there that folks don't realize.
Thomas?
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you. You talk about boating, Billy. Have you seen the Citadel's new boating center?
I have not. I've seen it from afar. We just did some work there with one of the graduates asking us to help. Foster McKissick asked us to help with a life jacket loaner board. So one of our education section, one of our officers down in Charleston, has been working on putting the life jacket loaner board up so that cadets, when they go out in the water, would have life jackets available, PFDs, to use at the new Marine Center and at the new boating center at the landing there. We put that. I think we're in the process of putting that up now. So
yeah, but I don't know if you know, back when we were at LCID, that was a shack.
It was. But I remember Rob Shelnut was loved to go out on the water, and I used to go out with him. He loved to do back then it was kneeboarding was popular, and we went out in the boat and did that a good bit. He was really good at it. But we had the Boston Whalers back then to go out on the little 15-foot boats to go out and have some fun in. But boating is a huge part of this state. I'm glad to see them invest in that at the Citadel, because you're right there on the Ashley River, great waterway, great area for folks to be able to, for our cadets to be able to go out and recreate. So it's important they be able to do that safely and have a good center to launch from to do that.
Billy, back when we were at the Citadel, there was a club called the Rod and Gun Club. Were you a member of that club?
I was a member of that club when I got there. Robbie Nally, who's the class of 90, was in that, and he basically was the president of that when we got there. And so everybody from Sumter knew if you went to the Citadel, you want to be a member of the Rod and Gun Club if you like to hunt, and it would give you a weekend home, which is kind of funny because I remember the first time I got to get a weekend to go home was for Rod and Gun, and I ended up in the back of a truck with Hotels XO, and that was very uncomfortable. I mean, it was hotel hell, and here I am with Mark Erickson in the back of the truck, and he was as uncomfortable as I was, didn't want to talk to me either. It was just funny. You get thrust in those weird scenarios where you're not at the Citadel anymore, but as y'all well know, you're still there because you're a knob, and you're a knob even when you're 120 miles away. So that was kind of funny.
Right.
And Thomas, you'll always be a knob to me, no matter what happens. We're talking with Billy Downer right here as our very special Band of Gold Spotlight this week. And Billy with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. If you've got a question real quick before we get out of here today, feel free to text us and we'll pass that along to Billy. 843-779-8496 is how you can reach out to us here as we're, again, having this very special Band of Gold Spotlight. Billy, let's brag on South Carolina's wildlife. I know there's a wide variety from the mountains to the seas. You got Lake Murray and the Midlands as well, the PD and all of the upstate and more. What is it that South Carolina, if you had the floor in front of the entire nation and you could brag what South Carolina's wildlife options are that are better than the rest of the country, what would that be?
So two things stand out in our state. Number one, it's hard to go anywhere in our state and not see a boat. So a third of our state's water. About 30% of our state is water. So we have a tremendous. We got from the mountains, as you said, we've got streams. We've got Lake Jocassee all the way down to the coast, where we have thousands of miles, literally, of coastline when you count all the inland waterways and marshes. So a boat is a huge part of our state. We are in the top 10 in the country in number of boats, which is pretty surprising when you think of big states like Texas, New York, New Jersey, California, Florida, and here we are yet South Carolina is in the top 10. As far as wildlife goes, we have one of the most liberal deer seasons in the country. Our season begins on August 15th here in the Columbia area and runs through January 1st. Our deer limits are pretty liberal. I mean, with our new tagging system, I think it was around 17 deer that anybody in the state could take per person. I don't know what somebody could do with 17 deer. It's a lot of deer, but folks do take advantage of that. But our deer season, our rifle season, which is surprising, goes from August 15th to January 1st in much of our state. Of course, the up part of the state doesn't begin until October. But deer is probably one of our best and most widely enjoyed seasons in our state. Folks come from out of state because of our long deer season.
And, again, as a guy who's a native South Carolinian living away from the state, when I go to other states across the South and I tell them, Yes, believe it or not, Billy and Thomas, I have been deer hunting one time in my life, and it was a classic South Carolina deer hunting story. I think I'm right on this. South Carolina is one of the few states where you can hunt with dogs. Is that true?
That is correct. We still have a long-standing tradition from the plantation days of dog hunting, which transcends from the coast on up into the Midlands here. Not as much in the upper part of the state where dogs are basically only used for bear, but in a lot of our state from the Midlands to the coast, absolutely, dog hunting has been a large tradition.
And what that is you let dogs go out in the swamp. I was down in Orangeburg County doing this, and they go out and they bark up the deer, and the deer come running to you, and you got it's just like a warfare. You got a line of hunters sitting there waiting for dogs to come at you, and daggum deer about ran me over, and that's my one and only hunt. But yeah, if you haven't done that kind of hunting before, South Carolina offers that where I don't think too many other states do. So that's a neat thing. Again, deer hunting season right now, but don't do deer hunting when the Bulldogs are playing. So what a great thing. Thomas, anything more for Billy on your end?
One last question, Billy, because this is the Band of Gold segment. You've
Sure.
been out at the Citadel for what, 31 years now, or is it 29? I can't remember.
29 will be 30
29.
years next year. I'll be on
Okay.
30.
They didn't teach math to my class at the Citadel. What does the Band of Gold mean to Billy Downer?
For me, it's the integrity, number one, that Citadel cadets wear with them wherever they go. It's standing for something in a world that's different today. So many young people graduate school and don't have a direction in life and just don't have a belief structure. In fact, most of the world around us doesn't have a belief structure anymore. It's just kind of willy-nilly wherever you go, whatever the majority rules. And for me, the Citadel represents something important. It represents integrity. It represents that my word means something. A cadet does not lie, cheat, or steal, and or tolerate those who do. Sounds funny in today's world, but the truth is important. It's important in the line of work I do in law enforcement. Absolutely. When we hire young people to be officers, we need them to be truthful. We need them to be honest. We need them to have integrity. And officers in our job represent the communities that they serve. Game wardens, more than any other law enforcement agency, are a part of their community. They're in the local churches, they're on the water, they're in the woods, they're on the roadway, they're in the schools. And integrity is everything, and it's just hard to find integrity anymore. So the Band of Gold to me is all about integrity. It's all about standing for something that's not easy to stand for anymore. It's the truth. And that's just hard. Doing the right thing when others don't necessarily care or the laws don't match up to what you're doing, but you're still doing the right thing anyway, even if I'm unpopular. That's important to me.
My goodness.
Well said, sir.
I don't think there's anything more we can add. So let's just call it a day right there. By the way, before we get out of here, Christmas is coming fast. So let me go back to this shot here. Thomas, I want you to pay close attention to the background over there. There's a beautiful piece of artwork by the door of a class of 93 ring. I want you to hand draw that same thing and send that to me for Christmas this year. You think you could pull that off?
I'm sure you're going to love that finished result, John. Absolutely.
And by the way,
I'll make it look as good as your senior private uniform did, I'm sure, back in Delta Company.
Okay. And also, Billy, got to give credit to that beautiful diploma we see back there, the sheepskin right behind your duck. What a great combination. Billy, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on all your success, and we'll keep listening for you on Sports Talk across the Palmetto State.
Appreciate you having me on board today. Thanks.
All right. Billy Downer, everybody. Well, again, thank y'all for being a part of this show, Citadel Gray Line. Andrew will be back on here to talk about the VUL game and get us ready for the Military Classic of the South against VMI. That will be on next week's Citadel Gray Line. And, Thomas, we're going to leave people today with an assignment. Get your pen and paper out. You ready for this? We want y'all to come up with a list. If you won the lottery, which somebody in California did this week, if you won the lottery and money was not a problem at all, what would you do with it to improve the Citadel? I've got my list over here from things like we need a a standardized fence around campus, for goodness sakes, to better uniforms for the athletic teams, like really cool. I mean, why don't we have a light blue helmet, for goodness sake? All kind of crazy things. I want to know some of your things. Text me those to 843-779-8496, and we will come up with a list of all kind of things. Again, money's not an option. I don't want to hear the thing about, oh, we're poor little Citadel, we don't have the money. No, if money was not a problem, if we had that Thomas Scruggs money, what would we do with it? So that's the homework assignment. Thomas, get your pen and paper ready. I want to hear from you next week. How does that sound?
That sounds great, John. I've already started my list.
All right. All right. Again, thank y'all so much for being a part of the show. Thank you to Andrew. Thank you to Billy. And we'll be right back here. Good luck to the Dogs this week in the home finale. You've been watching Citadel Grayline, a production of CRM Sports. Fallout.